Fair warning, a lot of the audio in this video got messed up, so a lot of it is going to be a voiceover, and if the clips don't line up with what I'm saying exactly, that's probably why. Also, here is a better look at Glitch, and this is the dragon we're going to be learning to make. Hi everybody, today I'm making a new tutorial for Dragon Puppet, and this is going to be using Glitch 2.0's process. What will be included is a tutorial on the moving eye, the gum flaps, teeth, and then how I make the base, me specifically. It's not going to be a triangle base, it's not going to be any of the conventional bases, it's really just going to be how I do it in my process. So if you're a beginner, I would not recommend using this tutorial since it's a lot more difficult. But yeah, do not copy him. This is just an example, use your own design. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do, once you have all your pieces, I'm not going to do a tutorial part on the actual making the pieces since you should make your own design, but the first thing you're going to do is take your pieces and then put some glue on them. I use hot glue, and then you're going to glue it onto this black paper, and it's going to act as a liner to make the paper more sturdy and the puppet more durable. Although be careful because it does get pretty hot. And then I'll only glue down sections at a time. As you can see, I didn't finish here yet. And that makes it easier to glue down and not miss any gaps. So then I'll just keep on going like that. Okay, and now that all of your pieces are double lined, you can also double line with white paper if you want something to be in the middle, because you should still have everything double lined so stuff doesn't bend. You're going to cut them out, and you can leave a little bit of a border if you want a black outline without a marker, except I'm just gonna cut to straight under the paper. Okay, this is all your pieces cut out. The back is gonna look like that, and as you can see, it's a lot more sturdy than regular paper. That is what the regular paper looks like, and it's a lot more wiggly and flimsy, so that's why I line my paper. Okay, next I'm going to show you how to make the bottom base. And basically what I do is I fold the paper in half lightly so it doesn't crease all the way, and then I will fold that piece of paper in the middle and crease it. And then I'm going to flip it over and measure my 4 fingers out so that I know they can fit, and these are the lines that I left over. So then I flip it over and refold it, and then I basically trace a triangle as long as the bottom base using those lines. And as you can see, I'm showing you right there. This is my bottom base part fully cut out. And the next thing I'm going to do is glue it onto the bottom base, and I won't start.
And fuck, I feel every second episode I have to remind y'all that life is actually sometimes cookies and cream and rainbows.
Just glue the other one the same way, like that. And then I also went ahead and glued the front of it together so it was more pointed, except you don't have to do that. You could just make it a box shape, and then they also line up pretty well, and that's how it should be, otherwise your jaw could get messed up. And then here's what it looks like once you're all finished. What I'm going to do next is what I'm doing now is making the top part of the bottom base, and I'm going to cut it to about there because I'm not going to make it all the way, so that way there's room for the teeth. And that's what it should look like when you're finished. Then you're just going to glue it on and make it line up with the bottom part. And that is what it'll look like when you're finished. So if it's bent like that, I'm about to show you a way you can fix that. You can kind of put a solid piece of paper going across the entire thing. You can also use cardboard, so that way it's more straight. And here's what it looks like fixed. I put one on the front and one on the back part, as you can see here. That was just to give it a little extra support since it wasn't quite straight as I wanted it to be. And Then I also added a thumb ring, which is basically just to add stability. What I did is I measured the like first part of my thumb so that I could stick it all the way through like that. And yeah, I'm just showing how it is a lot easier to hold on to and more stable. So then the next thing I'm going to do is make the top base part. Basically what I do is I trace the bottom base but make it slightly wider, as you can see I'm about to do here. And I give it about like that much on either side. It's not an exact measure, it's just enough for it to have an overlap if you want an overlap. And this is what it'll look like if you add the overlap. Like the top base will go over part of the bottom base, and that's what I'm doing here. And then that is what the top base's like inside part looks like. And then I'm showing how much it overlaps. That's the part you're going to put your hand on. And then next, I'm going to go ahead and glue on the accessories like this, because once you get the forehead on, it's a lot more difficult since it tends to get in the way. So then this is what it looks like when it's finished. That's on one side, and then that is the bottom. I would have done the bottom beforehand, except I completely forgot about it. Except it ended up working out since it fits it pretty well. Okay, and then how I make the forehead is I basically trace the upper base like that, although it is really flimsy right now. I trace it, and then I go basically as long as I can, and then I'll just cut it into a triangle shape. And this is my finished forehead, or rather my cutout forehead. It's not quite finished yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pinch the nose together, like as much as I want it to be close together. And then I'm going to line it up and kind of glue it like that. It should follow the top like forehead exactly, otherwise it'll look a little bit weird. Although if you have horns on the outside, then it'll be fine. And what I'm saying here is it should end about where I'm pointing to. It can go a little farther or a little less depending on what. Although it is mostly for cosmetic purposes. And then you could also just put a bar where I was pointing. That works pretty much the same. But it also makes it a little bit more sturdy. That is what the forehead looks like once I've got it all glued on. And it's not colored yet, but we'll color it later. And then that is what the bottom jaw looks like. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and color both of them. And this is what it looks like when it's finished. You should color both of them just because it makes it look a lot more uniform. You could also color the inside of the mouth, but I don't do that here. And next I'm going to line them up kind of like I'm doing now. And to glue the top and bottom bases together, I will take 2 strips folded like that and fold them like on either side of the thumb. I'll put them really close together since it's just easier that way for me, especially since the top base is about to have those poles you can see there, except that is not part of this tutorial. That was just a random fix that I did because the base was a little bit wobbly. And then that is what it looks like when it's all connected. Okay, this is how I make the teeth. So basically, I'm going to trace the bottom part of the bottom jaw up until the inside parts interfere. And then we'll go from there. I'll also trace the top part so that I know how far the teeth will stick out. And that's what I'm about to do. This is what it looks like when I'm finished. Although I don't end up keeping this for the bottom jaw since I could just glue it to the side since there's a bit of an overlap. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. That's like the final shape that I gave it. I also cut off a little bit from the front so it's not all the way sticking out. These are all the teeth drawn, and I kept the line so I knew where to glue it. But basically what I do is I flip it over and then trace it on the other side. And the teeth should kind of line up like that. These are both the teeth cut out together. And I'm going to glue them into the bottom base next. That is what they will look like once they're all glued in. To get them to line up, I kind of like put the other side next to the side that I had already glued on with the reference, and then just kind of transferred it over. I'm not very good at explaining it, but that's basically what I do to get them even. Okay, so to make the top teeth, I basically trace the outside shape of the top jaw, and I'm kind of gonna line it up to the top part because it's gonna need to stick down, although I do cut off the front like I did with the bottom jaw. And then I also trace the bottom part of the top jaw just so I know where it sticks out yet again. And then the teeth also can't be too long because they need to fit in the middle of the bottom jaw, so also be mindful of that. So I'm gonna go ahead and make the teeth, and this is what they ended up looking like. I did end up trimming the top off a little bit since it was a bit long, but this is what it looks like once it's all cut out. And I'm just gonna stick it into the top jaw and then glue it like that. This is what it looks like once it's glued in, but I'm not finished yet, as you can see, since it's pretty crooked. I do add little strips to either side of the teeth to keep them in place and also prevent them from like moving around. This is what the strips look like before they're cut or before they're glued in. I made 4. 2 are gonna go on the front end and then 2 are gonna go on the bottom end. Although what I'm showing there is that it does need to line up with the middle of the bottom jaw. So make sure you do that before you glue it in. And then that's what it looks like glued in. And that's testing how they line up. And as you can see, they do line up pretty well. Here's me showing a little bit better of how they line up. And that's basically invisible teeth. So they're not visible once the mouth is closed. And then here's me making the moving eye. I kept the part that I cut out of the base, and I basically trace it so that I know where the eye will be at its baseline. And then I'm also going to trace the forehead and the area around it so that I know like how far the eye has to move. This is what it looks like when I'm finished. And then I also kind of cut it off before the forehead goes up, since that'll allow it to move more like forward. If I kept the forehead, it would not have. And then I just kind of make a box surrounding the eye shape, so that way there's room to move. And then I'm going to draw the pupil a little bit towards the front of the eye, so that way it's in the middle of the box, and that is also its like baseline looking forward. And then there's room to move forwards and backwards. This is the eye colored. Next, I'm just going to cut it out. And then I'm going to make this little strip. This is so I can put my finger in it. And then I'm kind of just going to wrap it around that like first knuckle of my finger. And then I'll explain it better once it's glued onto the paper. So that's basically what it looks like. It's glued towards the front of the eye or the back of the eye, and that's just so I have more movement. And then here's how it looks on the inside of the base. I did mess up the cylinder there, and that'll be fixed later, except it's not interfering. And what you do is you line it up with the eye hole on the outside, and then you can kind of just like bend your finger to move it around. It is pretty unstable right now, but that's because I haven't added the top loop yet since I was waiting. And that's what we're going to add right now. Alright, this is the inside of the base after adding the top loop. As you can see, I made it only for 3 fingers, since if you include the pointer finger in it, it makes it really hard to move the eye. And then it's also slightly offset, so your hand is still in like the center. The next thing we're going to do is add the gum flap. And this also kind of like prevents him from opening his mouth super wide like that. And then it also is just like looks cool to me. So we're going to add that right now. And what I do is I make a triangle the size of like how big I want the mouth to open. Then this is it cut out and colored. I kind of just like roughly colored it because it's not that visible. And then I fold it in half so that way the mouth can close with it inside of it. And then that is it all glued in. I kind of just have to like bend it a little bit forcefully at first to get it to find its like way that it wants to bend. And then as you can see, that's it on the inside. This is it mostly bent. And then to glue it, I just glued it to the bottom jaw on the like outside almost, and then the inner jaw. And this is the other flap. I kind of just did the same thing, just on the other side. And then this is what it looks like all finished with the gum flaps. The mouth should open pretty smoothly, like open and closed. And then this is the finished tutorial. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I would appreciate some feedback. This is also just kind of showing Glitch 2.0 in his finished version. And bye!